Welcome to Rails, Ales, and Old Towns. Sometimes the best memories you take home from a trip to Europe aren't of the sights and cities you've seen, but of the people you met along the way. Sometimes a boisterous night in an Austrian hostel leads to making a couple of good friends. And sometimes, years later, one of those guys agrees to be a guest on your podcast to report on a recent trip to Italy. Enter avid European traveler and my mate, Stu Wilson. Stu and I met while we were traveling back in the day, and we start the show recalling that night and all the hijinks that ensued. Then, Stu recounts his recent trip to Naples, which also featured an excursion to Pompeii, and offers up some advice for visiting the city. All right, let's go to Naples via Vienna.
What is the gap between the train and the platform?
All right, let's welcome to Rails, Ales, and Old Town, Stu Wilson, European traveler extraordinaire, one of the biggest supporters you'll ever meet of York City Football Club, and a good friend of mine. Stu, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. And may I say, whenever we speak, I don't really think about it, but suddenly when you've started recording, I sound very much like a member of the royal family. Don't know why that is.
Welcome all here on Rails, Ales, and Old Towns.
Thank you for inviting me on. I'm excited to talk about this place in particular. I've only recently visited, so still fresh in the memory.
We're going to talk about Naples in a little bit, but we can't really separate our interaction here from our origin story, which is possibly the quintessence of the Rails, Ales, Old Towns European travel experience.
It certainly appears to be the nucleus of how this podcast came around. You and I met in an old town, having both of us traveled there via rail, and we both had a beer in hand. So
that's what I'm saying.
Ticks the boxes, doesn't it?
We didn't know it at the time. Let's backtrack to that fateful night in Vienna.
So I was traveling Europe on the Interrail travel card. I was traveling with my good friend, who is obviously a very good friend of yours as well.
Hi, James.
The two of us had traveled from Budapest into Vienna. We were there our first night, and I am a big fan of the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL team, and I happened to notice whilst queuing at the bar, somebody was wearing a St. Louis Blues cap. And because I had 2 or 3 drinks in me, I figured, hey, let's go and talk to that guy, because at least I know he's going to be able to speak the same language as me, which, considering that we were staying in an international hostel, there was a variety of languages around, and you weren't always sure you were going to find somebody that you could talk to, and I was pretty confident. So I believe I just came up to you and started talking about the hockey.
You came up to me, you asked me if I could tell you the time. You showed me your watch with the Detroit Red Wings logo on it.
That's right.
I made a wisecrack, something on a watch that I couldn't make out the time. And you laughed, I laughed. We shook hands, we hugged. We knew we had found someone that we would be pals with, and the night proceeded from there.
I had 2 beers, you just got served, and I was like, look, my friend and I, there's a spare seat at our table, come sit with us. And I think we eventually got to bed at about 3 a.m. It was a late night. It just snowballed that whole evening, didn't it? I mean, the main bar closed, and we were all told to move somewhere else, and then we ended up congregating somewhere different. And there was a group of German kids, and one of them had a crate of beer. And so long as James and I kept playing acoustic guitar, they kept feeding us beer.
It was a bit like, you were almost a hired hand. You had the acoustic guitar. And for folks that might not, have stayed in many hostels over the years in Europe, there's always a guitar.
Usually mounted on the wall somewhere. And I don't even know if it was supposed to be played, but I'd acquired it off the wall somewhere, and we were just playing it.
You remember some of the songs you played? Because I can specifically remember you playing "Closing Time" by Semisonic.
Yes, because I am a child of the late 90s and early thousands. So that, semisonic tunes were bang in the wheelhouse. A couple of Foo Fighters numbers I think we played as well. I really strongly remember at the constant insistence of this small kid with curly hair who was dishing out the beer. He wanted us to play Country Roads by John Denver.
Of course.
And we had to look it up. I don't think I could remember. I mean, I could barely count my legs at this point, but I certainly couldn't figure out the chord progression of Country Roads. And I do remember fishing that one out, and I couldn't remember all the words, but it didn't matter. As long as I was playing the guitar, they were all singing it at the top of their voice. And there was a moment, I think, where guy who was on the 24-hour reception came in, and I thought, oh man, we're all going to get told you've been too noisy, go home. And he came in and he said to James, yeah, that was good. I like that one. And then he went back to the reception. I was like, okay, we'll just keep going then.
Now,
we'll just keep going until this German guy stops giving us beer. That's
and the background here is that you and James were accomplished musicians where you're from.
Yeah, I mean, I've played in bands basically from the age of 16 onwards. Not always very good bands, I'll caveat, but we reached a point where I was, at that particular time in life, I was playing 2 or 3 times a week. And I was playing both drums in a rock band, and I was playing acoustic guitar at certain like acoustic nights or open mic nights and stuff, playing weddings and christenings and bar mitzvahs, all those sorts of things. Anything to make sure I paid my rent, essentially, was the bottom line. James and I had gone busking a few times, so the idea of having a few beers and playing guitar in bars and stuff, not alien to us by any stretch, and something that we recreated several years later at a bar in your hometown when we came to visit you in St. Louis. Again, got way too drunk and ended up on the stage with a couple of acoustic guitars, entertaining people who were, I'm unsure as to whether they wanted to be entertained. But yeah, it's a theme here, isn't there?
Now, how I ended up at that hostel, and we've got to give this place a shout out because they've been around for a long time. It's the Hostel Ruthensteiner in Vienna, and they got a 4.7 rating on Google in 2025. And from what I remember, it's a cute, budget-friendly place, very friendly staff, and they have private rooms. So if you're the type who, isn't a hostel person, there's always private rooms these days. So, if you're on a budget, it's an option. So we want to give them, they are in no way paying for this. I just want to mention that. How I came to be at this hostel is a story in itself as well, because it's kind of an example of the serendipity type things that happen. I Eurailed through Northern Europe, down Spain, up into the Alps, and then crossed over from Italy to Croatia. And then I came back on a ferry from Croatia. I'd gone over there on a ferry as well. Before I left Croatia, I'd booked a room in a hostel in Florence. I showed up in Florence after a long travel day, walked in, relieved to be there. I'd like to check in, expecting a welcome drink, some advice, a map to be handed to me. Instead, I was told that I had accidentally booked into an all-female dorm. So I thought, well, okay, so just move some things around, do what you need to do. My mistake, it happens, the early days of online booking. Yeah. No, there was nothing they could do. Dejected, I walked out, stumbled my way to the train station, and then just like in the movies or something, I was like, where's the next overnight train? Where's it heading? Vienna? I'm going to Vienna. Scurried into an internet cafe right around the rail station, booked the hostel, got on a train overnight, ended up in Vienna, and then that's the night we met.
But one of my favorite things about traveling Europe is what you've just described right there. You go to a train station in a major European city, look at the departures board, and there's like 15 to 20 destinations that you think, yeah, I'd like to visit there.
And it's a pinch me moment.
Because you've got that, that Eurail ticket. So it's like, yeah, where do you want to go? Just pick one off a list. It is that straightforward. We navigated a lot of our journey on that trip doing exactly that. We've seen everything that we wanted to see in Budapest. Where do we go next? Well, there's a train to Vienna leaving in half an hour. Well, that's good because I need some breakfast. Right, get some breakfast. Half an hour later, we're on the train to Vienna.
So
It's
when you set off, you didn't have a real agenda. Had you taken the Eurostar? Had you taken the train all the way from?
no, we flew. We had a flight in and a flight out, and that was it. And the flight in was to Krakow in Poland, and the flight out was from Barcelona. And what we did between those two dates was just whatever fell our way.
And how long was the trip in total?
Nearly 4 weeks, I think.
Okay, that's some quality
So
time.
yeah, we'd do like 2 or 3 days somewhere. Then we'd look up where to go next. Off we went. Poland was great. We really enjoyed Krakow. Budapest was fantastic. We liked Prague. We liked Vienna. Did like Vienna. We enjoyed Munich. Like that one. We then we'd intended to try and get to Switzerland, and then in one of those moments where you're at the Munich train station, and then you realize there isn't a train going where you want it to go, and then you have a quick look at the internet cafe, just as you were doing, and there isn't an option to book anywhere in Switzerland that wouldn't have absolutely destroyed our budget. Way too expensive. So at that point, we're like, right, quick change of plan. We're gonna have to go France. So hadn't intended to, but we ended up going down through France all the way. We'd got across to Strasbourg and then all the way down through France, through Dijon, and it was incredible. And there was a point where we got to Nice, and I've got very vivid memories of getting off the train in Nice, walking to the hostel, checking in, putting bags down, and then literally walking into the sea, like no stopping, just fully clothed. I I was so
Is that legal?
unpleasant. No idea, but I was so unpleasant. I was so disgusted in myself. I was like, I need to feel clean. We spent the whole day just lying on the beach, buying beers from the guy who walks around with a cool box. Just and so desperate to get clean was I actually walked into the sea with my wallet in my pocket. Didn't think anything about it. Walked in there. I was about chest deep when I realized, oh, I'm still carrying my wallet. But we just literally, we got our euro notes out, stuck some pebbles on them so they would dry out and not blow away. And then when the guy with the cool box came around, we were just buying Heineken tins with slightly damp euros.
And
But,
anyone
you
wondering
know,
about that young German boy in Vienna, he was unharmed. He was just drunk out of his case of beer.
I have a feeling had he been sober, he would not have been so generous. Um, I'm not going to argue with that. I'm also not going to say if he was somewhat manipulated into giving us more beer. Um, but, I do believe musicians should be fairly paid, whether that is in tins of Italian lager that he collected from somewhere or otherwise. I was putting the effort in, man. I was learning those John Denver tunes. And if he wants to keep hearing them, then he's got to keep paying the piper.
And the American hangers-on who just met you benefit as well.
That was the funny thing. He was just handing them out to you as well. And nobody was questioning the fact that you weren't playing or singing.
That's a
look,
skill that I honed over many years at university with my friends that played in bands.
you just make yourself look like you're attached to them.
Fast forward many years, stayed in touch. I end up living in England, not too far from where you live, and everything has blossomed from there. Modern day, you travel around Europe a good amount for
I
leisure.
do. Yeah. I need to find a reason to go to Liechtenstein. I haven't been there before. I need to go to Luxembourg as well. My wife actually has relatives that live in Luxembourg, and I need to find a way to sort of coerce that into a trip. Recently, I've been to Naples, as we're going to talk about. I also did a little trip through northern France and into southern Belgium as well. I did a little road trip around the battlefields of World War One and the memorials around there. I have over a dozen relatives buried over there, so try and do that trip every couple of years. Go out there and do that. But in the main, I think there's only about 4 or 5 that I haven't done.
So let's talk about Naples.
So we've done Italy a few times, different places. This was actually a city neither of us had been to before. We went to Rome a couple of years back with our son. He absolutely loved it. We went to Venice just before our son was born. I'd been to Livorno before, and we'd done several things, but neither of us had ever done Naples. I am a bit of a history dork. I'm also a bit of a geography nerd. So the idea of going somewhere that's got these historical ruins, that's got an active volcano next to it, and the fact that Naples itself is a huge metropolitan city right on the coast. There's a number of gastronomical origin stories there. So it's the home of pizza. The idea of those, the pizzas are made with these tomatoes that are a whole, they're a different kind of tomato. And apparently I had heard that the citrus fruits off the Amalfi Coast were somewhere you had to try them to believe them.
Well, yeah, they're talking about lemons as big as your head sometimes.
Right. This is what I'm hearing. So I'm thinking this is somewhere interesting to go. It's quite similar to Rome in some ways, in that wherever you go, there is incredible architecture. Even just to walk down the harbor side it's incredible. The buildings down there are interesting to look at. There's little parks, there's little beaches. There was a lot to see, there was a lot to do, and I thought we could easily, fill a holiday, fill a trip. But I definitely wanted to go down to Pompeii. There was potential to go to Herculaneum as well, and potentially the idea of seeing some more of Vesuvius.
Obviously Naples is one of these places that always gets hit with the G word. Everyone's going to always throw out gritty. Is that appropriate, would you say? And that's not to say gritty's bad. Gritty's full of character, gritty's full of color, gritty's full of life. But I do feel like you hear that a lot with
if you go to Rome or to Venice and you think Naples is going to be the same, you're going to be surprised, because it is not. I mean, we are getting the train places, and we are sat with people who are commuting. It is a fully functional business city. There is no massive push for tourism. It isn't. There are aspects of it which are tourism related. There are businesses and tours and those sorts of things. Yeah, of course there are. But the majority of the city is fully functional. It is a living, breathing city. It's kind of like people would go to places like Liverpool just for the tourism. I mean, there are tourist aspects to Liverpool. Of course there are. There's incredible history in that city. But there's also people going to and from work. There's also people who live there, and they are doing their regular commute. They're doing their 9 to 5. They are not going to stand on ceremony for you. You have to enjoy your holiday around them. This is their city. This is not yours. You have to give way or yield to the people who live and work there. And I feel that's how it should be.
And maybe that's refreshing.
You are a guest in their city. You are not there to be treated like, royalty, or thank you ever so much for coming here and spending your money in our city. It just doesn't do that. And I found that a surprise, but actually quite a welcome one. I like to see the real life side of things, rather than the perhaps somewhat curated tourist side of things.
It was a bit of a smack in the...
Yeah, but I never found it a problem. It was never a problem. Little things that you got to get used to. Like if you go to cross the road, they will not stop for you. Tourists are really surprised by this. Your best bet is to find some locals who are waiting to cross the road as well. We found this one of the days we were walking. We just so happened to be walking in the same direction as a slightly older lady, and honestly, whenever she moved, we moved. It was just like that. And she walked out with more determination than the guy on the moped riding towards her. It was just that straightforward. So yeah, you've got to have your wits about you. Some of the alleyways and stuff are quite small. There's cars parked on either side of the road, and the mopeds are trying to get up and down there as well. So it's just, you probably just have to be aware of it so much more. There's certain things about moving around the city that you learn very quickly in your first, in your first few hours of being a pedestrian there.
Walk me through the setting, and it looks so dramatic. You've got the sea, you've got Mount Vesuvius, you've got all this. Are you seeing that almost all the time when you're walking around?
The volcano is very dominating. I won't say it dominates the skyline because it's far enough away that you can see it just without it like blocking the sun. I did liken it and compare it to if you're ever in Seattle and Tacoma and you can see Mount Rainier in the distance. I found that fascinating. Whenever you were up any kind of a height in that area of Washington State, you could see this huge mountain, this huge, massive volcano on the landscape. And it was brilliant. And I really liked it. And I found it very similar to that. Wherever you go in the city's quite hilly. And from quite a few of the streets, you can see Vesuvius in the distance. The coast, probably less so. Mainly because when you're going up and down those alleyways and those streets, most of the buildings are 3 or 4 stories high. So you don't necessarily get the view out to the coast. You definitely get the sea breeze and the sea air. And that's quite, in some ways, almost disorientating because you'd be walking up and down these steps in this quite tight alleyway and you'll get the waft of the salt air and you'll think, where's that coming from? How do I get to that? You can't see the coast or the sea from anywhere. It's quite refreshing. You do get a lot of clean air because of that. You do feel like it's quite a clean air city. But I will say the same as most other Italian cities. If you're not prepared for it, the idea of seeing a lot of graffiti and stuff, that can be quite new.
Sure. That's just kind of modern life, and you can wish it away, but it's not going away.
You go to any modern city, there's going to be graffiti. Naples has a really interesting vibe about it. You get the feeling that there's always something going on, and you can go find it if you want. Wherever you went, you could see in the distance or you could hear in the distance there was some music being played somewhere, and then you go and find the piazza where that was taking place and there was like a string quartet playing. No reason, just practice, outdoor practice in the piazza, in the city. There's like 300 people have gathered around or, just listening to a string quartet. Great. There always seemed to be something going on. I get the feeling it's one of those cities where you would never be bored.
What is the gap between the train and the platform?
Okay, well, I just wanted to take a second to say thanks for listening to Rails, Ales, and Old Towns. I hope you're enjoying this episode and that it's helping you get excited for your next European adventure. Be sure to check out the link in the episode description, because there you'll find all the information you need if you decide to follow up on the places and topics that came up on the show. Oh yeah, if you are digging the podcast and you had a spare minute, I'd be forever grateful if you were to leave a review or a rating on the platform you're listening on, as those little things do go a long way. And if you really want to get crazy, why not give me a follow on Instagram or Facebook at Rails, Ales, Old Towns. Back to the show.
What is the gap between the train and the platform?
So obviously, the history, they've got the archaeological museum there, which is considered one of the best in the country. The National Archaeological Museum. You decided to skip that.
Yeah, my main thrust or my main reason for wanting to go to Naples was to visit Pompeii. That was one of the big things on my to-do list. Now, my wife and my 8-year-old son are willing to they're willing to join in for a while. My issue with museums is I'm one of those guys that will read everything in the museum. I will read all the plaques. I will visit all of the exhibitions. I will look at every container and every glass case they have.
You're all in.
Yeah. I go to the museum, I'm there for the day. This is not a 2-hour visit. I am there for the whole day. So with Pompeii, I wanted to go there. If I was going to spend a day doing something with the historical aspect of that area of Italy. I wanted it to be Pompeii. It was up there on my bucket list, and I would rather do that than necessarily, like, I would rather walk those streets than look at pictures and artifacts in the museum.
Oh, you don't have to explain it to me. It was just that the people of Naples wanted me to ask you about that decision.
Yeah, I didn't go to the museum because I went to walk the streets.
That's
I
your
went
response.
to walk the streets of those historical areas rather than simply look at it in a container. I will point out at this bit as well, in Pompeii, they also have historical artifacts in containers. So you get the best of both worlds.
You take a train to get to Pompeii.
We did indeed from Napoli Centrale. It was so easy. So easy. Italia Rail, no bad words to say about the Italian rail system whatsoever. A train station was bang in the middle of the city. There's a huge pedestrian area out front of it. So it's really easy to get to, really easy to find. And our first train was cancelled. We waited an extra 15 minutes. That was it. Train arrives, comfortable seating, wonderful journey, the ocean on one side, Vesuvius on the other side. Like, what's not to love? And
you're excited because this was your big thing.
This was my day. This was my day. And in fairness to my son, who does enjoy a bit of history, he was quite excited about it as well. So, we were all in a good mood. Considering the low of suddenly realizing a train was cancelled to the then high of thinking it's only 15 minutes until the next one. So, yeah, I literally Googled how to get train tickets in Italy, and I put in the stations I wanted to go to, and off we went. It was that straightforward. I ordered them online, and I scanned the QR code at the station. It was so straightforward. Honestly, nothing I say could ever do it justice.
Oh, okay. Let's move on then. Talk about the pizza.
It's one of those places where I almost set myself up to be disappointed because I'd built it up in my head to be this incredible, just the idea of going and walking the streets that were walked thousands of years ago. This idea that these things were preserved and I was going to get to walk around the houses that were lived in by people of that time. I almost couldn't believe that it would live up to my expectations. But I have to say, it met them and more. It was phenomenal. You want to say new, but the town of Pompeii itself, not the archaeological park, but the town itself is actually really sweet. It's a really nice little town. I found the whole day to be just beyond my expectations. The park itself is maybe a little bit expensive if you weren't hugely interested in it. If you've got a lot of interest in that period, in that park, in that event, that volcanic eruption and the event that buried Pompeii, if you have interest in that, then it's not expensive.
This is the real deal here.
Yeah, I'm ticking a bucket list item here by going here and seeing it. This is real. I am walking the streets walked by dudes in sandals. This is the whole point of me coming to this part of this country is to visit this. And it lived up to all of my expectations. It was fabulous. I learned some things that I didn't know. So the street itself is actually sunk below the level that you're meant to walk. And when you get to a crossroads, there's just like granite posts in the middle of the street. The idea is that you didn't walk and nobody rode horses through the middle of the streets. That's not what it was for. The streets were actually for waste and water. So you just threw all the waste from your household into the middle of the street. And because the street was lower than everywhere else, when the rains came, the water would just push it away. And everybody walked on either side of the street on the bit that was of a level. So it's like when you were building roads, you didn't just build a road on the level. You dug down and built the road lower than the street. Didn't realize that. It makes it somewhat difficult to walk around if you're not particularly mobile, I will say. One of the things that really gets me is There is a little amphitheater in Pompeii, and when you come out the amphitheater, out the north exit, Vesuvius is right there. And you are so much closer when you're in Pompeii than you are when you're in Naples. And you step out the amphitheater and it is towering over you. And you think, my word, these people had no chance. No chance. By the time you saw that volcano explode, you wouldn't have even made it to the end of the street.
Why would really bring it home?
I think because when we'd been in Naples and looked back at it, you thought, yeah, that's a really big volcano. And then suddenly when you're in Pompeii, it's on top of you. I mean, it is huge, and it really does. I mean, yeah, it really does tower over that part of the city. To the point where, you almost kind of want to go to the local people and go, that's still active, right? You know what happened last time, because there's a whole park here, sort of, it shows exactly what happened last time. And yet, you're living here, and it's well overdue. You don't think that's a bit scary? Clearly, they're not bothered, or if they are, they're not bothered enough. Thoroughly enjoyed it. We got the train down there. That was easy. The park itself was fantastic. We had a great time. My son found ways to entertain himself, because when you do cross the street there, of course, you're hopping on those concrete posts, as I say, not concrete posts, but they're sort of granite stone pillars, and you're hopping across them. He thought that was great. So literally he entertained himself by just crossing the street a bunch of times. I read everything I could find. I walked around all the houses that were open to me. Honestly, just geeked out for the entire time that I was there. And
I've read that it's very exposed to the sun.
It is. Definitely take hats. A lot of it is open. There's a lot of squares and a lot of piazzas in Pompeii. It was a very sociable city. The way that the Romans had made it, there was multiple squares and open courtyards, etc. And then most of the buildings, their roofs didn't survive, as you would expect. So there's very little in the way of roofs and shade. So yeah, I would say that's a very good shout. Hats would be a must. Also, take water with you. Take as much water as you feel you will need. We were going there for the whole day, so I was carrying a rucksack full of water.
And what time of the year you were there in, was it April?
Yeah.
So that's got to be about almost perfect time of year to be there.
Yeah, it was warm, it was dry, but it wasn't so hot that I could barely move. Just for the listeners, I am beautifully afflicted with all of my Irish heritage when it comes to my complexion. I will burn in February in the shade. So I have to be careful of these things, and I didn't find it oppressively hot. It was just right. I think it was about 19 to about 25 Celsius. It was just nice. It was decent t-shirt weather.
19 Celsius would be 66 degrees, and you're saying it got up to 25?
Yeah.
So 66 to 77. Yeah, I mean, that's what you describe actually as a textbook definition of pleasant.
Yeah, t-shirt weather. It was nice, man. It was really comfortable. You didn't feel like you were drying out all the time, that you weren't dehydrated all the time. Yeah, it was really nice.
Now, you mentioned Vesuvius, but you didn't actually take the plunge and head on over there, did you?
No, sadly not. It was on the to-do list. So realized quite late to the situation, unfortunately, that there are ways and means of getting up to Vesuvius, and the public transport option, which would always be my favorite option, does not really, it's not really compatible, shall we say. So you need a ticket to get up to Vesuvius. There is a gate to get through to be able to get up to the rim, and you have to book your ticket in advance. These tickets are very difficult to get hold of. They are bought in bulk very early on by some tour companies. So to get a ticket is difficult. If you do manage to get a ticket, you need to be there at the time of your ticket. If you are a minute or two late, that's it. You will not be allowed access. So to rely on public transport is quite the gamble, and there is not that much of it that goes up there. So I think there's only two buses a day that go up to Vesuvius, which is difficult because they are a fair journey from Pompeii. So you know you're running quite a gamble to make sure that you are there on time. There isn't a car park really up there for you if you have a hire car. There isn't much in the way of a car park to get up there. And again, you need one of those tickets. There is also, if you were thinking, oh, I'll go up there and then I'll get a ticket, there is no signal. There is no signal at the top of Vesuvius. So you cannot go online and get one, even though that is the only way to do it. You cannot buy a ticket with cash at the gate. You have to go online and buy your ticket in advance.
Now you're saying these things like you found out the hard way.
We didn't go up there. I found this out on the day that we were looking to do this. Obviously, there is an easy way of doing this, and that is you go to Pompeii rail station and you pick one of the tour groups that is advertising trips up Vesuvius. That's how to do it, because they've not only got the minibus that will take you up there and they can park it wherever they want, they've also got all the tickets. So I hate to be the guy that says this, but you might have to bite the bullet and use one of the tour groups to get up there, because otherwise, if you try and do it yourself, and I am a stickler for trying to do this stuff myself,
yeah,
you're not going to be able to do it. You will be incredibly lucky if you can get a ticket, and then if you can get up there in the right amount of time to make sure that it's still
so
a
it
valid
sounds
ticket.
like they've got that whole system worked out pretty well.
I think there's a few tour companies who've well and truly nailed this process, and they've made sure that they hold all the tickets. Yeah, fair play. They've seen their market and they've made it a niche one. But that's how you're going to be able to do it. And I wish I'd have known that ahead of time, because I think I probably would have done it. If I'd have realized this ahead of time, I probably would have done it. But by the time I realized this is what the situation was, yeah, I was late to the party.
People go to Naples for the history. They go for the nearby Pompeii. They go for trips to Capri, other islands, but they also come for the food.
So food is a big reason why I travel. Going out for dinner on an evening was an absolute joy. It was probably, outside of the trip to Pompeii, it was my favorite part of the trip.
It's the birthplace of pizza.
It certainly is, and it's a whole different ball game. A whole different ball game. You and I have eaten pizza in St. Louis, and I have to say, what I ate in Naples would not have been related in any way to what we ate in St. Louis.
Are you taking a shot at the Emo's pizza?
Not in the slightest. It's just a different animal. They should not both be called pizza. They are so different. The only thing that's even slightly similar is that it's got a dough base. That's it. They're cooked differently. The toppings on it are completely different. They don't really do cheese on the pizza. It is primarily just a Pomodoro tomato base that's on there. Believe me, you don't need anything else on there. It is phenomenal. My son was less than impressed. He was expecting the cheese aspect. He's big on the cheese aspect. And even the variety of interesting Italian meats wasn't enough to get over his disappointment that there was no cheese on it. But I was blown away. The tomato that they put on those pizzas is in itself, like, I'm used to tomato puree or tomato being put as the base of a pizza and it being there literally as a foundational ingredient. It is not a big part of the pizza. Here, the tomato is a massive part of what's going on.
It's a star.
And when your tomatoes taste like that, I am not in the least bit surprised. I asked somebody local. I asked the guy who was at the front desk of the hotel, who barely spoke much English. I asked him where he recommended for pizza. He gave me two places. I tried them both. They were both incredible. So
are these the places that are like famous as the birthplace, or are these some of his favorites?
No, these are places him and his sister liked.
Great.
Um, you know, he said they were the places where he and his sister go when they meet up and go out for dinner. That's where they like to go. It wasn't on one of the main pedestrian areas. It was two or three streets back. And to be honest, I said to him, bear in mind this is a conversation taking place via Google Translate. Um, what would you suggest in terms of what's the go-to pizza? He said basically none of them were bad, but stick with what you know, stick with the basics, and let Neapolitan pizza change your way of understanding that. The flavors on there, there's herbs, there's things like rocket and basil, and you'll get, a small disc of like buffalo mozzarella or something on there, but it won't be grated cheese as you would expect
Okay,
on
yeah. So
regular
there's a
pizzas.
little cheese. That's what I was thinking. There's some.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, there is. There
Okay.
is mozzarella, but it is literally, hand
Yeah.
sliced from a bowl of mozzarella.
Yeah.
It is part of the decoration almost. But I mean, I had something that had goat's cheese and rocket and balsamic vinegar, just superb. I was
Do you have a name of these places?
uh, no, because I literally got him to pin it on my map, and I walked there. And we walked up to Via San Gregorio El Meno, which is where you have all the stalls out on the street, the really narrow alleyway. All the stalls are out on the street. People are selling Christmas decorations all year round. They're selling, the little figurines of the Pope and all these sort of things. It's a really interesting place. One thing that you will notice in Naples is there are just as many pictures of Diego Maradona as there are of Jesus Christ.
I was going to ask you about that. How many pictures of Diego Maradona, the footballer, did you see?
Just as many as there are of the icons of the Catholic Church. Honestly, there's pictures of of Jesus Christ that have been nicely painted, wonderful pictures. And then the head has been taken off, and it's Diego Maradona instead. He is the man feeding the 5,000 in his Napoli home shirt. It's incredible. I mean, the guy hasn't played there for decades, but they still absolutely
Well, and
revere him.
as they
He
should. I mean, he was there
he was
7 years,
he was there
and
seven
he was
years.
an integral part of that community. And I say
He
bravo.
won Serie A twice. He won the Coppa Italia. He won the Super Coppa Italia, and won the European Cup.
Find
He,
any of that fried pizza?
no, I did go looking as well. Um, I did go looking. The fried pizza was something that we'd spoken about before I went, and I went looking for it. I was hoping to find it of an evening. This tiny little pop-up stall somewhere that was selling it. I never found it. It was definitely something I had my eye on, but it never showed up. 100% the gelato and the ice cream options and dessert options there, just as good as anywhere else I've found in Italy. My son left that trip. I'm almost certain he was more than 50% pizza or gelato. I mean, he just ate his way around the city. It was brilliant. Um, and when you go somewhere new and you take kids somewhere new, you always have that worry that they're not going to enjoy it. They're not going to eat anything. They're going to be difficult. I Maybe it was my experience, but I can only speak for my experience. He ate his way through everything that we offered him. He ate everything. It was brilliant. They do a like a breakfast cake that's soaked in honey. It's called the pastoria. Now, it is known as the Neapolitan Easter cake, so maybe I happened to be there at the right time because we were there in April. But just imagine a cake where the main ingredient is honey. I mean, I bit into this thing and the honey just dripped. Honestly, to eat it was incredible because when you bit into it, the texture was not cake. The texture was almost liquid. It was phenomenal. The pastries on offer in that city are superb. Going up on the funicular railway up to the castle, that was great. Really enjoyed that too. Yeah, there was the Piazza del Plebiscito. That was a nice place as well. Just these as I say, you just walk around the city and there's just these open plazas and there's open squares
Yeah.
and courtyards and stuff.
Just life being lived outside,
Yeah,
especially in the
absolutely.
evening.
Absolutely. Like everybody's at work during the day. Come sort of 6, 7 p.m., everybody's out on the street.
Yeah, and they're
And
taking
you
their
are,
walks, and you see
yeah,
the older couples walking hand in hand, and kids
yeah.
kicking the ball, and it's quite an experience in Italy around that time.
Especially in sort of the residential areas. We ended up in the I'm going to butcher this, but Quartieri Spagnoli. It was really nice. It's quite steep, goes it's on quite a hill. That stereotypical old Italian city idea. Your 3, 4 story buildings each way. There's washing hung across the alleyway on either side. It's that
It's
kind
just
of
what you went to Italy to see.
right. There's a moped or two. There's kids playing football in the street. Yeah, it's just what you want.
All right, Stu. Thanks for joining me. You've painted a heck of a picture. I haven't made it to Naples, but got to get there at some point. It's an easy train ride from Rome, anywhere down on that Amalfi coast, skirt the coast. And to know good people like you have been there and had a good time, that means a lot.
Yeah, no problem, Scott. Anytime.